Welcome to the Amadeus Airline Podcast, the podcast with the insights for the airline industry, where we keep you up to date with the latest developments in airline technology and business. Brought to you from the experts at Amadeus, the world's leading provider of airline technology. Hello and welcome, friends, to the Amadeus Airline Podcast. In this podcast, we cover topics like how to optimize your network and sales, how to use data for better decision-making, developing customer loyalty, and more. I'm your host, David Lengen, Amadeus VP Marketing, and today I'm pleased to bring you the first in our new podcast series, The Big Reset, Why a Mindset Shift is Needed in Airline Revenue Management, delivered by Benjamin Cany, Amadeus's Director of Offer Optimization. Benjamin will speak about changes in consumer behavior, the marketplace, and technology spurred by the current COVID crisis, and how Amadeus data scientists are challenging long-standing revenue management principles, best practices, and assumptions.
Thank you, David. Indeed, this unprecedented crisis calls for a reset on our thinking of airline revenue management. That's why I have the pleasure to have with me today two renowned experts who will share two complementary viewpoints on this critical field for the success of airline commercial operations. So first of all, welcome Thomas Fiig. Thomas, you're the Amadeus Chief Scientist. You're overlooking the overall scientific methodologies for Altea revenue management solutions and offer management. You come with many years of experience, notably at Scandinavian Airlines. And also a warm welcome to you, Suraj Mohamed. So Suraj, after several executive commercial positions at Emirates or Etihad, you're now in charge of business consulting for airlines in Asia Pacific. In the next few minutes, we will be discussing the impact on revenue management of this crisis we're all facing. We'll discuss the new techniques and science the airline commercial unit can set up during the recovery phase, as well as turn this crisis into an opportunity and emerge stronger for the new norm. Talking of an unprecedented crisis, Thomas, why in your view is this crisis different to other major crises our industry faced?
Yeah, I will come to that in a second, but first I would mention that revenue management is a fairly mature discipline with over 40 years behind it, and it's not new to crisis. It has seen many crises before. But this time is different. It's really the scale of it. I was just reading a few days ago a publication from IATA that mentioned that the RPK dropped 94% in April alone. So basically the industry came to a halt. It has started though to recover a little. But this time is scary in a way, because since there has been no traffic, that has left holes in the revenue management database. But also we expect that after the recovery, the customer demand may not be the same as those recorded in the historical database. And therefore we can no longer rely on our historical database. So that poses the unique challenge we face today.
Thank you, Thomas. So revenue management science and systems are challenged in their fundamentals. Data becomes unreliable. The future is even more uncertain. What do we do in these circumstances? During this period, Suraj, you've been talking with senior executives at airlines in Asia Pacific. What's keeping them awake at night these days?
To me, you know that this crisis has caused a significant damage to the industry. And substantial reductions of passenger numbers have forced our customers to scale back their operations like never before. And they have a very challenging questions in front of them. So what happens next, and how the experience of flying will evolve? What markets to be prioritized, and where will I start my network? How do I rebuild my network and optimize revenue when historical data are not valid anymore? How will the passenger demand will evolve? What should be my pricing and demand management strategies? These are the very challenging and critical questions that we have been actively working on with our customers in the past couple of months.
Many very valid and crucial questions, Suraj. Thanks a lot. We'll be answering some of them during this podcast. So now that the scene is set, let's get closer to what shall be done to reset airline revenue management. To us, revenue management can be seen as a blend of science, technology, and the people using this technology. We'll be exploring along those three axes how to navigate during this crisis and be ready for the new norm. So Thomas, how can science help us in this situation with, as we said, little data and a quite uncertain future?
Yeah, this is a real challenge. So what we believe is that we have come up with a good solution. But before explaining this idea, we have to look a little under the hood of how the forecasting methodology works today. So the way a forecast model works is that it's a representation of customer demand. So at Amadeus, we have a parametric forecast model that has some parameters, for example, the volume, seasonality, day a week, special events, booking curving, and customer willingness to pay. So that's quite a lot. And to calibrate all these parameters, we need a full year of data of departed flights. Now, we also use live sales data to adjust for volume fluctuations across individual departure dates. And under normal circumstances, this approach worked very well. But as I explained, now we have a database we can no longer really rely on. So what do we do?
So let's not wait, Thomas. You're saying we are already using the live data today. How are we using them differently to overcome the current situation?
Yeah, in reality, you're right. I think that the idea we came up with is really to separate the forecast parameters into two groups. Those that are, you can say, resilient to the crisis and those that we expect to change. So luckily, the majority of the parameters we can trust from the historical database. These are things like the seasonal demand pattern and the day a week, while other parameters such as the volume and booking curve and willingness to pay, that are relatively fewer parameters, and we can use the live sales data to extract those parameters. And therefore, since we only have a few parameters to estimate, we can also use only little data, the recent sales data. So that is the idea.
An adaptive and stable forecast at the same time. This sounds like a tough nut you managed to crack, Thomas. And it deserves more time to be well understood. And as I understand, you'll be releasing a blog article in a few days to give more explanations. Let me recap though. As I understood, we rely on both past and live data, and we mix them depending on the customer behavior we'd like to understand. Taking an example, Christmas, its impact would remain the same before and after the crisis, while for instance, the willingness to pay of passenger, this would require a new data set and to better understand the current trends in order to forecast them. Am I correct, Thomas?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay, so now, Thomas, the $1 million question. When can we have this science available in our tools?
Yeah, we are really working hard to do this. I mean, we understand that the airlines need it now, and we'll make sure they have it before the end of the year.
This year? That sounds pretty exciting, Thomas. Looking forward to it. Still, until we get the science available in our tools, Suraj, what pieces of advice can we share with airline commercial teams to optimize our routes?
Unlike in the past, we have a very unique situation where passenger demand recovery is rooted in many unknowns, and we have no control on that, like virus severity and its spread, government actions related to the travel, economy, and border controls, and traveler sentiments. Therefore, the demand recovery will happen at different magnitude and pace in different countries and regions. We know that as the sentiments around traveling are shifting, we may expect to see differences in demand recovery, magnitude and its duration between business and leisure travelers, between short-haul and long-haul trips. With the current level of uncertainty, I'm expecting there could be a multiple different phases ahead of us, for which airlines need to develop the right strategies to address each phase separately. example, restarting the aircraft, the airline's operation, the recovery period, and ramping up to the new reality. At the initial phase of recovery, analysts will be putting a lot of efforts in analyzing, developing price strategies, implementing and checking and acting. It's an iterative steps in revenue management for the control and continuous improvement of processes and product offerings. Over the time, as markets recover, we'll begin to repopulate more reliable data for forecasting and decision making. But this will be happening only progressively and gradually in line with the demand recovery pattern of each market. So airlines need to evaluate the potential scenarios for all those phases that are ahead of us and develop right strategies for each phase separately, take them to closer to the best case scenario as they evolve, and minimize the business risk in each phase.
Thank you, Suraj. This is quite fascinating to explore the different paths towards recovery. I know you're going to release very soon a blog article on this topic, and I'm really looking forward to reading this article. So now, Thomas, Suraj, we've often heard these days that one can turn a crisis into an opportunity. How does this apply to revenue management? So for instance, we know our revenue management tools, processes, they've been lacking competitive insights, or they haven't been able to better segment customer demand than business and leisure. Thomas, starting with you, do we have any good news to share on those fronts?
Yes, we do. So, before maybe coming into detail about these plans and ideas, we have to see them in light of that we have the ability now to collect new competitive data, and also there is an increasing computational speed. And what we saw, say, over the last decade is new algorithms based on machine learning, and we are leveraging on these you can say technological revolutions to build you can say systems that are able to compute prices at the individualized level and also considering the competitive environment. And let's take an example such as dynamic pricing, which is already, we can say, in production. Unlike revenue management, if we look at that, it computes one price, what we call a market price, and that is the same for all customers, irrespective of the competitive situation. So dynamic pricing can do better than that. It will take input from the revenue management system, but it will compute a price that is targeted to the individual customer, considering this customer's alternative itineraries and prices from the competitors. So I believe that is a great advancement and that we will see in the coming years.
So Thomas, indeed with dynamic pricing, we do bring more insights from the market, from the competition, as well from the customer for each and every shopping request. Still, dynamic pricing is becoming a reality, being implemented or on the way to be implemented for some of our customers. Do we have more short, mid, long-term plan for our revenue management science?
Yes. This is, if we look further into the future, what we are working on is what we call a competitive aware revenue management system, CARMS. And the ambition here is quite large. So today, even though, of course, we know competitors, you can say demand depend a lot on competitor prices, that is not really factored into the revenue management systems explicitly. So we want to model the customer choice, say, given all the competitor prices as we did for dynamic pricing, but also considering how the competitor airlines may react to our pricing decisions. So that is a real challenge. So if we look at, say, the scope of revenue management, we have to remember that it has to compute, say, the demand across the whole booking horizon. So here dynamic pricing makes a simplification. It only looks at the current session, while if you had to build a revenue management system, you therefore have to estimate what the competitors will charge in the future and how they're going to respond to your pricing action. That is really challenging. But nevertheless, I believe that is where we are heading. And most likely this will be powered by machine learning algorithms.
So this is definitely pushing the boundaries of traditional revenue management system, being able to better segment customer demand and also take into account a very fast changing market environment. And this is becoming possible by expanding the use of technologies. So we are now merging parametric models, so more traditional approach, with machine learning type models. Talking with some of our airline friends, as well as people working on the field of artificial intelligence, I think it's clearly understood that this will have a major impact on how airlines are organized, what's going to be the day-to-day life of revenue management analysts. So Suraj, you've been very close to this topic with your friends at the business consulting at Amadeus. What is your take on this topic?
Indeed, Benjamin. We have been working very closely with our artificial intelligence team to adapt the demand forecasting models. Using multiple data, so we have at Amadeus, like search data, bookings, cancellations, schedules, capacity, market size, and we combine these data with the external data sources like pandemic situation per country, our restrictions, and passenger sentiments. We are also working with our partner Predict HQ. We look at the demand intelligence on possible events across our customers' network in the months to come. Using this machine learning, it helps us in automating the whole process in real-time mode and making this data more intelligent and relevant for airlines for managing the uncertainty, really helping our customers detect patterns of recovery and understand how the recovery is actually shaping up at different pace from different markets on different O&Ds, origin destinations. We use data and help our customers to work with them to manage the potential scenarios for restart and recovery and beyond. We are using artificial intelligence to enhance human intelligence during this uncertain period. And it is creating an important wealth of knowledge about the future.
Adapt and evolve. This is even more true in this time of crisis for our industry. And had we had this conversation, this very same conversation on revenue management just 6 months ago, the theme would have been quite different. Back then, total offer optimization, as it's usually called, was in the mind of airline commercial executives. Airlines started to expand their product offering beyond seats, including ancillary services, third-party content, years ago now. And major initiatives, such as the IATA new distribution capability, One Order, or the recently created IATA Dynamic Offer Forum, were actively looking at unlocking the promised value for airlines. So today, Suraj, do you still see airlines actively looking at these topics in the coming months, despite the crisis?
Yeah, when we engage with our customers in these discussions, we really look at the holistic view of total offer optimization. If you can look at the airline commercial strategy holistically for revenue generation, then we can really identify what systems need to be integrated and what we really need to have an integrated approach to total offer optimization. And if you look at our revenue management science and integrate it with other functions of airline like network planning, dynamic pricing, merchandising and retailing, together with the new distribution capabilities, you will begin to see how new and increased revenue generation opportunities begin to unfold. During this recovery phase, airlines also need to reevaluate its product bundling and unbundling strategies, as ancillaries are going to play a greater role. I believe there will be more demand for extra seats, whether it is adjacent or right in front or right behind, to have some social distancing. Reducing onboard baggage allowance will increase more checked-in bags, and the rate still be a viable option for passengers. Therefore, pricing is the key. Airlines might want to think about setting the discounted prices for extra seats. They also need to think about policies related to the refund, flexibility, and changes. If they really want to stimulate the demand, they need to think about how increased value can be delivered to travelers with increasing the cost to travelers. They need to develop smart retailing capabilities with total offer optimization to create custom offers reflecting what individual travelers value most and how much they are willing to pay. So I believe this is a great area of opportunity for airlines to work on it and capture it.
Technically, it's all about stimulating the demand, which is the top priority for airline commercial teams during the recovery phase. So no surprise that being able to optimize the offer beyond the core flight seat remains a business priority for them. Thomas, one simple question to you. Are our tools, science and system ready for this challenge?
Yes and no. With the new distribution capabilities, airlines will have more control over the offer construction and retailing. This is both an opportunity and a challenge. If we look at it today, revenue management is responsible for setting the optimal market price for a given fare product. This means that the product here is fixed, the flights, the conditions and services, it's only the price that varies. And also there's no personalization or contextual information that is considered. In the future, with an offer management system, it will have a more complex and expanded role. It will be responsible for both the product construction, so that is the how to bundle flights, conditions and ancillaries and even third-party content, as you mentioned, Benjamin, and setting the price. And this must be targeted to the individual customer considering contextual information. But it even does not stop there. We also need to consider retailing. How should the offer be presented to the customer? On the science front, there's still a lot of open questions. We already talked about dynamic pricing holding part of the answer. But most likely the challenges will have to be addressed with a blend of different techniques, such as statistical methods, operations research, and customer choice modeling, but also more modern techniques from machine learning, recommender systems, and deep learning will be part of the picture.
Thanks, Thomas. As I understand, we'll be leveraging all the new techniques we are currently implementing in the core revenue management systems to optimize much more dynamic offers. And as we are reaching the end of our podcast, I'd like to ask one last question to you, Suraj, around the dynamicity of the airline offerings. If I look back at the last couple months, what has been the most dynamic element of the airline offer, that's probably the airline schedules themselves. Somehow the core of the airline offer, where does an airline travel? However, we do not see usually a very tight collaboration between network planning department and revenue management and pricing department within an airline commercial team. Is this the right time, Suraj, to foster this collaboration?
Certainly, we know that schedule is the core of the airline's product offerings. And the airlines apply the other product and service attributes over this core product to create an augmented product attributes that exceed the passenger expectations and create competitive differentiation. With the current uncertainty in the markets, much more agility is required in developing and distributing the product offerings across different markets. Airlines should be in a position to design that schedule more efficiently and more agile manner to achieve a step change in airlines revenue optimization, especially this pandemic period. With a high uncertainty, revenue management will be continuously changing the inventory based on the demand recovery, based on the competitors' actions and related to the schedule changes and pricing and offerings, and based on the passenger sentiments. Airlines should develop the capabilities for dynamic offers, dynamic pricing, and dynamic inventory controls. Therefore, network planning, revenue management, and pricing should be working very closely each other. And it should be in a more integrated manner to tackle this problem. When we focus on what we see in the network planning, revenue management, and dynamic pricing, we would see that going forward, these three systems should be talking to each other, sharing the data across each system in a real-time mode, sharing analyst interventions and strategies in a real-time mode across these three systems to facilitate a dynamic offer, dynamic pricing, and dynamic inventory control, helping airline to provide the right offer to the right passenger at the right price at the right context, in line with the changing market behavior to achieve the greater revenue. And when we think about applying this across airlines' entire network and across the entire origin destinations, then we will see a new area begin to open up for airlines. That's going to be the future, I guess.
The right offer to the right passenger at the right price for the right context. That's the right way to conclude this podcast on revenue management. 3 things I'd like to remember from this podcast. First, the revenue management business objective remains the same, being at the service of the airline commercial practices, even though such an unprecedented crisis has called for a new reality for revenue management. Second, the good piece of news is that Amadeus scientists, engineers, business consultants are enhancing revenue management solutions to enable our industry to better manage the recovery phase and emerge even stronger. And last, this would even be more efficient for airlines that are ready to take a bold approach by both looking at their offer more holistically, as well as bringing their key commercial departments closer, such as network planning and revenue management. I'd like now to thank you, Thomas and Suraj, for the very valuable insights you shared with us today. And last, I'd like to thank you all for listening to this podcast. And please stay tuned for Thomas and Suraj's upcoming blog post to get more insight on the science and the different recovery phases.
And that wraps up this episode of the Amadeus Airline Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and will join us again for future episodes for more insights from the airline experts at Amadeus. Until then, keep up to date with the latest news by following our Amadeus for Airlines LinkedIn account. Thanks for tuning in.